Hey there, welcome to School of Emo, the podcast where we dive into the world of emo, pop punk, and everything in between. If you've ever found yourself in your car screaming the lyrics to Taking Back Sunday, wearing way too much eyeliner in the early 2000s, adding a buckle or a chain to every outfit you've put on, you are in the right place. I'm Erin Judge, and each week I will be your fellow student, guiding you through the music, the culture, and the history that shaped an entire generation of angsty teens. I am not the teacher of this school. I am a fellow student, here to learn alongside you and from you. Together, we will cover a lot of information that doesn't really matter, but will remind us of the days of stalking MySpace channels and getting lost in chat rooms. So connect your dial up, turn on your webcam, and let's go to School of Emo. Welcome back to School of Emo. Before we get into today's deep dive episode on one of the kind of pillars of emo going into that second and third wave, I want to recap briefly the Used 25th anniversary tour self-titled album. So night one of the 3-night tour. I'm not doing a full episode for this just because I've done a lot on the Used. I'll recap more of their stuff from the cruise coming up. But if you recall from the episode that we did the deep dive on the Used, I had never really seen them live. I'd never been like a diehard fan beyond just like the hits until seeing them on the cruise, the Emo Is Not Dead cruise last year. Fell in love with them, especially live, and became obsessed. And so this year I've been listening to them nonstop. And so when they did the second leg of their 25th anniversary tour, which is where they play 3 albums, 3 nights in different cities, self-titled first in Love and Death, and then Lies for the Liars. I knew I wanted to go, but they did not come to Nashville. So that's the only reason I did not go to all 3 nights. Instead, we just went to self-titled in Indianapolis. We have family there. So we drove up Saturday morning, hung out with family, went to the show Saturday night, came back Sunday. We couldn't really stay another night. So we missed a little bit, but the show was so interesting because there was definitely more of the theme. So they had like a big setup photo op setup of the album where you could take a picture. Some of the merch like reflected different albums. They were doing these like special coins, but they didn't do special posters, which I was really upset about. I was hoping they would have a really cool poster because their merch I think is some of the best. They put a lot of creativity and art into it, and that wasn't really the case. So a little bit of a disappointment, but the rest of the merch was cool. I got a fun little hockey jersey. And then the show was just the album start to finish. They played it all the way through. They added a little bit in between, but like no other hits or anything. So they talked a little bit. There was before Poetic Tragedy, they pulled a little girl, like there were a decent amount of kids there. There's this little girl, I guess, towards the front, and it was her birthday. And so we all said happy birthday to her, and she had to stay on the stage for Poetic Tragedy. She looked terrified, but I was thinking about it going into it, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, why are there so many kids? This is not a kid friendly show, but self-titled isn't that bad. And the commentary around the night was a little bit different even than the cruise. Like the cruise was so much more fun. I think Bert really let loose and like had a good time with it. And the commentary and like just him interacting with the crowd was a lot different versus at this show, like very few crowd surfers. Like there was some energy in the room and it was definitely really full. It was at the Egyptian Ballroom in Indiana, like downtown Indianapolis. But it was different. So the band, amazing as always. It was fantastic. The crowd, I can't wait for the cruise, put it that way. But it was such a fun night. And so I know they only have a few more dates left, but if you haven't gone yet, it's worth it. The prices have been great. Again, we would have, if they came to Nashville, we would have done all 3 nights. I'm hoping they extended again and come to Nashville because I would do it. The one thing to note though, is that you are only getting the album start to finish. So the actual set for the Used was an hour. And that was a little sad. I was hoping that they would play the album and then come back and do even like 3 different songs. So like maybe some songs from other albums or newer songs, but they did not, probably because of the stamina of needing to play 3 full shows kind of back to back, which I know is a lot, but it was fun. Had a blast. Was glad that I went. Love the Used as always and can't wait for the cruise. And in the prep for the cruise, because the cruise is coming up at the end of January, we are doing deep dives into all of the bands that we haven't already covered. So we've already covered the Used, we've already covered Under Oath, we've already covered Hawthorne Heights, but we have so many more. And today we are starting that experience with Senses Fail. And this is a band that I feel like is such an emo staple. They're another like Jersey Northeast emo staple, but not one that I've ever really sat down to fully listen to. And again, I'm more of a pop punk girly. That's where I started. That was my, middle school. I was buying CDs more on the pop punk side. And so it's likely why, maybe even my age as well. I think this band really bridged that second to third wave well, and I was definitely more in the third wave. But I love so many of their big songs. I'm familiar with them in a way that I didn't realize was them. And so it's been really fun to do a little bit of research on the band. And what I ask from you is that if this is a band that you really love, I've never seen them live. So that'll be the first time at the cruise. I'm sure I'll have so much more to say after that. But if this is a band that you really love, I can't wait to hear your stories, your thoughts, things that I probably have completely missed that the internet just can't really tell me, especially back in the early 2000s. And so if you have those to share, please do. And the best way to do that is on YouTube. So if you're listening to this, maybe go over to YouTube, because you can share in the comments there. And that's a great way to interact. So I can't wait to hear from you. But if you are refreshing your memory or new to Census Fail as well, let's go back to the very beginning in Ridgewood, New Jersey, around 2001. So the story goes that Buddy Nielsen, who was then a teenager, posted an ad online. Where would that have been? Who knows? Maybe Craigslist? Seeking bandmates. So he wanted to start a band, posted an ad, and then he recruited Garrett Zablocki on guitar, David Miller, who was on guitar as well, and then Dan Trapp on drums. Eventually, then added Mike Glitta on bass. But James Gill was also on bass kind of around this time. So, really, really early on, James Gill very quickly replaced by Mike Glitta. So, we're going to get into the band members as we go, but just a little foreshadowing. Buddy Nielsen is the only remaining founding member today from Census Fail. So if you think about Census Fail, you think about Buddy Nielsen, who's lead vocals. He is kind of the band, but the members that kind of transitioned throughout their history, he was even quoted saying at one point that was like a new chapter, like different chapters of the band, and they all brought something unique that led to some of their evolution and some of the differences in the sounds that you hear because the band mates changed quite often. So very interesting to look at. Now, where did the band name come from? It's a very odd name. Buddy Nielsen did an interview back in the day about the origin of the name and said, in Hinduism, they believe that being alive is hell, and the only way to reach nirvana is to ultimately have no attachments to anything. If you want to reach the highest level of being, you have to let all your senses fail. So, senses fail. Very philosophical, very emo, a little spiritual tied in there, which was the heart of emo, especially in the early 2000s, going into paving the way for that third wave. They started like any other band, especially in Jersey, did local shows, skate parks, VFW halls, churches. They were able to move into that space anywhere they could get in as teenagers. So the underground space not fully open, so making their own path, getting their name out there. They did a few demos early on, and then they led to their first release of an EP called From the Depths of Dreams, which was around 2002, 2003. And this caught notice. It eventually led to bigger label attention. They ended up signing to Vagrant Records and kind of paving the way for their next step. One song on this album is still one of their top songs. I like this one a lot. I didn't realize it was so far into the beginning, but it's called Bloody Romance. So let's listen to those lyrics. Life is floating fast away. and I look, your head is turned away. From the moment you left, I knew that something wasn't right, but the feeling inside has kept me up all night. You and me, like one heartbeat. You and me, like one heartbeat. So slice open my veins and let the romance bleed away. From the moment you left, I knew that something wasn't right, but the feeling inside has kept me up all night. You and me, like one heartbeat. You and me, like one heartbeat. Back into what I thought I knew, these words inside me tell me what to do. My heart held in the palm of your hand. Forget my name, now I know the way to go. This place inside my demented mind. Forget my name, you saw me bleeding on the bathroom floor. Forget my name, this time in silence, this time I win. Forget my name, you'll never see my face again. Very emo. And back in the day, right? Teenage boys writing about heartbreak. So this was probably a very over exaggerated crush that he likely had, but writing about it, but hitting the chords of emo very heavily, very early on, which is why they gained so much traction within that period of time. And looking back at that period of time, going back to those origins of emo, the early 2000s, was when kind of this emo post-hardcore wave was gaining momentum. So we had Brand New, Taking Back Sunday, Thursday, all part of this kind of New Jersey based scene. Census Fail brought a little bit of a different flavor to the space and to the scene. So more hardcore roots, a little bit more poetic lyricism. And so some fans and critics alike credit them with pushing the boundaries of what emo could mean, which truly defines that transition from the second wave of emo, where we have Sunny Day Real Estate Thursday, into the third wave of emo, which is where we have Brand New, The Used, Taking Back Sunday early on, paving the way for then what became My Chemical Romance, Panic at the Disco, Fall Out Boy, everything to follow. So the idea that emo could be broader, there could be more to it, there could be layers to it, which was expanding throughout the entire US at the time, right? We even have Dashboard Confessional, we have Hawthorne Heights, all of them kind of coming into the scene around this time. So Census Fail fit very perfectly in that. Now, I know some of the critics, the diehard emos, which are probably not the ones listening to this podcast, would say that that's where emo stopped. And at that second wave, it was over, and only some bands were allowed in it at that point. But those of us who I think grew up in the third wave would say that that's the most beautiful part of this scene and genre as a whole. It's just the different diversity and like the roots being similar, but so many kind of layers of unique, manifestations or explorations of it. So Census Fail ended up signing with Vagrant Records, and they released their first full-length album, which was considered their debut, Let It Enfold You, in 2004. This has become kind of a cult classic for the emo post-hardcore fans. Still their top album to date, like a lot of bands in this world and around this time. And the title of the album is actually drawn from a poem by Charles Bukowski. I was going to pull the full poem, but it's called Let It Enfold You. It is very long, so I encourage you to go read it. But I think that ties back to why the lyricism early on is so poetic, is the tie to poems that the band had. And especially our lead, Buddy, had. So this one had more of a melodic punk hardcore breakdown, still maintained emotional lyrics, and gave us songs like Fight to Break Skin, Rum is for Drinking, Not for Burning, Irony of Dying on Your Birthday, Bury the Lie. So many good classic songs that have continued to define the band today. In a 2024 interview, Buddy reflected on kind of returning to this era and said, "It has absolutely been special to me. It always feels like a relevant record to play." So they have a lot of fondness and love for this record, which is great because it's what people want very often. In 2014, he described how performing the record live felt like leading the party for everyone, a space where you can, regardless of who you are, be a positive, uplifting thing. So felt connected. And we've talked about this so often about what made the emo space so special is not just the emotional vulnerability of the lyrics, but the connection to fans because of that. And so, bands that really, really did well around this time and have continued to do pretty well are those that were able to connect to their fans both through the music itself and through the live performances, which is so important and something that they did and they really like valued early on. So my favorite song from this album is "Buried Alive." I think shows some of the things that they were kind of wrestling with and going through around that time. So we'll read the lyrics. Rest in peace, girl. Your death is such a shame. The paper said a bullet got in your way, but I smell foul play, possibly poisoning. I had to bring her in for questioning. I went to your grave, dug up your body, brought it to my house where you lay. So let's play Dr. Babe. We'll operate today. Incisions must be made. You could help solve this case for me. I headed downtown to share what I had found. It's not a suicide, it's a crime. I have a witness. It's clearly evident there had to be someone else present. At the time of death, poisons in stomach. How could she pull it if she's dead? So let's play Dr. Babe. We'll operate today. Incisions must be made. You could help solve this case. We need a scalpel now. Under white lights you lay. We've got to hurry up before the flesh decays. Away, away. I'll catch the murderer and send him away. I'll get the evidence from your last day, your last day. So let's play Dr. Babe. We'll operate today. Incisions must be made. You can help solve this case. We need a scalpel now. Under the white lights you lay. We've got to hurry up before the flesh decays. Away, away. Drama. So much drama. So this album really hit at the perfect moment when the emo label was becoming more mainstream. And thankfully, Census Fail was able to maintain enough credibility because of their more hardcore roots to appeal to the scene's more underground fans, again, bridging that gap between that second and third wave well. This also helped with opening the door to more of the pop punk side, kind of blending with those kind of heavier post hardcore roots, kind of like we see with Mayday Parade and some of the bands there, which influenced, again, a wave of bands that followed and flew the door open for what was happening in the mid 2000s. And it gave many fans their first kind of anthemic emo songs. So the ones that you screamed along to, that you were on a band tee, like these were some of the songs that people really connected with early on. And maybe you're one of those people that this was, a foundation for you and something that kind of defined your experience with emo moving forward. So, what happened next? Their second full length album in 2006 is called Still Searching. And this album showed a little bit more growth, some maturity, a more polished sound, deeper lyrical explorations, really showcasing that the band members themselves were growing up. They're no longer teenagers, but they're experiencing that early adulthood, which all the bands have done the same thing. And we see this across the genre. And they leaned less into this purely kind of screamo chaos than what they had compared to their earlier material. And so, again, it became a little bit more palatable, which, again, we also see that trend with a lot of these bands. This is also where we got a big band member change. So Dave Miller on guitar left in 2005 and was replaced by Heath Saraceno, who had been on Midtown, and he joined for guitar. They were touring hard. They were part of major tours like Warped Tour and other big events, again, like all the bands of that time. And this is considered to be one of their kind of heights by critics as an album, just because it blended both their vulnerability with accessibility in terms of like commercial success. So one of their most successful albums, I feel like the first album, probably like the first debut album, not the EP, it's probably what they're defined by now. And like true fans are really connected to. But this album is one of the top and kind of became like their height, and is considered that by more so critics. So this demonstrated that the band was more than just like a flash in the scene. They're not a one-hit wonder, but they were evolving, they were touring, they were able to sustain their momentum heading into the mid 2000s. And it influenced some younger emo and post hardcore bands who saw that you can blend this heaviness with melodies and introspection, with aggression. You can connect to fans. Again, you can be a little bit more accessible to a wider audience while still holding to those roots. And this album, with that, really deepened in terms of emotional content with the lyrics. Buddy's lyrics began to deal with real life struggles, identity, loss, existential questions, rather than just kind of this relational angst of a teenage boy. Again, following a lot of the paths of a lot of the bands that were so connected to lyrics. I think about Brand New with this, some of those bands. So one of the songs in this album that I really love is Can't Be Saved. So let's read those lyrics. Follow your bliss, it beats on my chest. I know I got it tattooed for a reason. Why can't I just hold it true? Because I'm still crashing all the funerals of these people that I never knew. I'm stuck in a coma, stuck in a never ending sleep. And someday I will wake up and realize I made up everything. I shut the door and turn all the lights out and listen to all the songs that the night shouts. They go something just like this. So go fill up a glass with tonic, rocks, and gin and drink yourself to happiness. I'm stuck in a coma, stuck in a never ending sleep. And someday I will wake up and realize I made up everything. We can all hang out ourselves from gold chandeliers and drink goodbye to all the pain and fears. Loose lips have sunk the ship to a shallow grave, washed up on the rocks. I won't be saved. I won't be saved. I'm stuck in a coma, stuck in a never ending sleep. And someday I will wake up and realize I gave up everything. So follow your bliss. It reads on my chest. I know I got it tattooed for a reason. I shut the door and turn the lights out and listen to all the songs that the night shouts. So, with their second album, they then moved into their third and fourth albums. In 2008, Life is Not a Waiting Room, and then The Fire in 2010. This, if you recall, right, again, the story that we've told a million times, this was the time where kind of the emo genre was beginning to shift. And with the rise of digital music, MySpace declining and shutting down, this post hardcore emo peak that we saw in the mid 2000s, like to the early 2000s, had passed. And so a lot of bands around this time began to break up. Census Fail did not, they stuck it out. But those that did stick it out, this is where we start to see some of their least performing, kind of weaker, if you will, albums in terms of their commercial success, because the scene as a whole had changed. So we see some bands completely change who they are, like Fall Out Boy, to, become part of a different scene. Panic at the Disco, disappeared, but kind of transitioned. But we also see bands, who were sticking it out kind of then fall a little bit and see a dip in their success, which I think shows the bands that really, really cared and were in it, but part of just the era and the time. So the 2008 record, Life is Not a Waiting Room, balanced the aggression and melody more deliberately. So it had a little bit more of an aggressive backbone to it. And then the 2010 album, The Fire, kind of morphed a little bit further into much heavier tracks, while some were leaning more into that stadium rock mainstream accessibility, kind of like a lot of bands, again, were doing, to try to be more rock than emo. And in an interview, Buddy said at the process looking at For Hell is in Your Head, but really reflective of this entire era. The first phase is just to throw everything out. I don't judge what it is. I experiment with everything with different instruments and different tempos, showing kind of their mindset in these two albums, that they're not just repeating a formula, but they were trying things that were new, even if the fans may not like them, which honestly is one of the best things they could have done, because I don't think it mattered at that point in time. No one knew. Hindsight is, the best. But if we look back, like even bands who really stuck to their roots, like didn't see a lot of success around this time, because again, the scene, the music scene, the genre as a whole, like everything was changing. A lot of us that were deeply in the scene were graduating high school, going to college, like transitioning in life. And that led to some of these shifts and changes. This is also where we saw some other band members change. So Mike Klitta on bass in 2008 left. He was replaced by Jason Black from Hot Water Music. just as a temporary replacement and then became a full-time member. And then in 2009, Heath Saraceno left after the Warped Tour and then was replaced by Zach Roach on guitar. So we had some changing of band members, a lot of things changing. So, what came after 2010? Census Fails continued to release more albums. Again, not seeing quite as much commercial success as they did with the early ones, but we have Renacer in 2013. It's a Spanish word that means to be reborn. Buddy talked about this album and said it needs to be reborn. The record sounds like nothing like the band. So, trying to kind of redo their sound and maybe reinvent themselves a little bit. 2015, we have Pull the Thorns from Your Heart. 2018, If There Is Light, It Will Find You. 2022, Hell Is in Your Head, which is their latest kind of full length album. But they also released Joshua Tree Live, so kind of a live recording in 2021. Kind of right before that, they also released some lullaby covers just this year in 2025 of Census Fail and Saves the Day. So they came together and did these like lullaby covers as an album, probably showcasing the band members having children. I feel like that's kind of another era we're seeing of some of these earlier bands being part of like the Disney Goes Punk album, or, you know, all those different things, kind of pulling in maybe their journeys through parenthood and things like that. But it's really setting them up to possibly open the door for a new era. They're like a lot of bands right now that are seeing, you know, a lot of success, some even more than they saw in those early 2000s. There's a lot of opportunity for fans and the band alike, which again, I'm so excited to experience that on the cruise. That'll be my first experience live with the band. And so I'm excited to see that. I feel like just listening back through some of the early albums, prepping for this episode, it makes me think that seeing them live, it's going to really awaken like a strong like love for the band, because they've never broken up. They've stayed true. They've stayed together, even if the band members have changed. I guess you can say Buddy has never stopped, and has continued to kind of weave in lyricism throughout the different stages of his life. And I think we're seeing so many beautiful songs come out of adulthood for a lot of these bands that were already so introspective. So I'm excited for what that brings. And Buddy has continued to do that. In 2022 interview, looking at Hell Is in Your Head, he said, "My wife had a pretty serious childbirth. I've had to start to come to terms with my own death because of my daughter, which keeps who keeps asking me about it. And in writing the album, he said, I experiment with everything. Then once I start to see what's really working, I'll narrow it down a little bit more. So still evolving and still growing." We did have some more band member changes throughout this whole time. So Garrett Zablocki on guitar left in 2011 to go to college, which sounds kind of wild. Was replaced by Matt Smith on guitar, who's originally from Strike Anywhere. 2014, Dan Trapp on drums stepped down as a full-time member and then was replaced just for touring and recordings between 2014 and 2018 by Chris Hornbrook from Poison the Well. And then, so more recently, the current lineup as of the latest records created were Buddy Nielsen, who is the heartbeat of the band, and then Gavin Caswell, Jason Milbank, and Steve Carey. So who knows what the band will be moving forward. But Buddy is still very much at the center of it. These are his songs. So you could probably say that Census Fail is Buddy Nielsen more than an actual band, which is interesting and kind of unique and different, I think, from this time compared to like a Dashboard, who's always just been Chris Carrabba as Dashboard Confessional. But most bands are bands and have at least a couple of core members that have stayed throughout. So very interesting. So Census Fail, they have cemented their own legacy in the emo space. If we think about the poeticism, the emotional vulnerability through lyricism, they are truly emo and have been able to be part of the, I think, most defining era of emo as a whole. Like we would not have what we have today with emo if it wasn't for that era. I truly believe that. And like I love the second wave of emo, but the second wave fans, like we could fight over that, right? If it wasn't for that third wave and the start of it, yeah, it changed the genre, it changed the scene, it opened the door for more people and inclusivity, which is great. It also, I think, allowed for the genre to stick. And what we're seeing now with this kind of revival, I think we had this sort of maybe fourth wave that's kind of the Pierce the Veil, younger crowd, the evolution of My Chemical Romance. But I think what we're seeing now are so many of us that were in that third wave being adults, like in our 30s, maybe even in our 40s, and coming back to what we loved as teenagers and what defined that part of our lives. And so seeing bands continue to stick with that and evolve with that, I think, again, is so exciting. And there's a lot of opportunity based on how Census Fail has kind of navigated their own careers. There's a lot of opportunity for new albums to reflect a lot of that. And that's something that I want to stay connected to, because I feel like there's going to be a lot of emotional connection through the songs to come versus just going back to those teenage angst years that I still love. But it's good to evolve as well. I hope that you enjoyed this. Again, there's not a lot to share because I don't have a ton of personal stories from this band. I tried looking up like a few notable stories. Overall, this has been a pretty drama-free band. Like the most notable stories that they've had are just the way that they've changed and evolved, and that's really it. They're pretty drama free and they don't have a lot of crazy stories that I could find. And again, if you are a fan of the band, you have been since the beginning, you may have more that you can share. So again, please share that. This is meant to be a place where we can all learn together. That's the whole point. So I would love to hear from you. As we go into next week, tonight, I'm in my Ego of a Bachelorette party, Hayley Williams Yellow, because I'm going to the Ego Night listening party for the new album. I hope that tonight is the night that I get to actually say hello to Hayley Williams if she's there, but she may not be. But if she is, I will definitely share about it. If not, I probably will not. But we'll see. So see you back next week for that, a little teaser. And then we'll keep going with the bands that are going to be part of the Emo's Not Dead cruise. The next one on the docket is Silverstein, and I actually just booked tickets to see them. They're currently on tour. I think it just started. It's going right now. But Thursday is opening for them. And since doing the Thursday episode, I have been wanting so much to see Thursday live, and they just are not touring themselves in Nashville, but Silverstein is coming to Nashville with Thursday. The prices are great. So if you're also a Nashville person, join me there. I would love to see you, and then we can party together. But I'm excited to learn more about Silverstein so that I can get excited for that. And then again, get excited for them on the cruise. I'm hoping that it opens the door to like that deep appreciation of the band. Like I become a fan seeing a band live and like really learning about their stories and having that connection. So I'm excited for that. So when that comes along kind of down the road, we will recap that for sure. But until then, we're going to keep going through the bands that will be on the Emo's Not Dead cruise in 2026. So excited to have you with me for that. If there is a band that you want to talk about, if you want to come on the podcast, I would love to have you. You can comment a band that you want me to cover, or if you want to join me and be interviewed and share your love for a band or part of this genre, the scene, whatever it is that you care about, there's an email address in the show notes. Please email me and we can set that up, because I would love to have you on and get to learn from you, but also just talk about the things that you love and that you want to share. So your homework this week is to go listen to some of these early albums from Census Fail. If you haven't gone through the full albums and you've just listened to the hits like me, let's go listen to those albums and appreciate the different eras of the band. And then I will see you in next week's episode.